Watch her whole face change. Not the eyes, not the mouth, the whole face. That half second where a woman decides she's done pretending to be surprised. He looks genuinely happy with her. He ain't genuinely happy with that. Somebody in the room said it out loud while the stream was still running. And then, this is the part one keep rewinding. Blueface flipped the camera. Away from himself. Away from Rock. Like the lens caught him doing something he wasn't ready for us to see yet. Nah. This one's different. This one's got fingerprints on it. Y'all know the deal. Like, subscribe. Hit that bell. Because part 2 of this one's already loading, and I'm not about to explain it twice. Ride with us. Here's what actually happened. Stripped clean. Jonathan Porter, Blueface to y'all, got caught on video cozied up with his ex Chrisean Malone during a recent stretch of tour activity. Most recently the Miami leg, according to a July 29th clip circulating out of that camp. His current girlfriend Nevaeh Akira, who's pregnant with his son, baby name reportedly Solar Porter, due late August per the ultrasound date she posted back in December, was watching the stream in real time, from his streaming room, inside his house. That detail matters more than people think. And now watch the mechanics. Because that's the piece the paraphrase crowd keeps missing. She's not watching this from a hotel room, from her mama's house, from a friend's group chat scrolling clips after the fact. She's on his couch, in his room, streaming to his audience, on the setup he pays the internet bill for. That's a woman who's been positioned, physically, financially, narratively, as the domestic anchor of the whole operation. When the domestic anchor watches the ship steer itself into an X, in real time, from the captain's chair, that's not a heartbreak clip. That's a governance crisis, reported by Complex, but readable to anybody who's ever been the last person to know while sitting in the exact room where the knowing was invented. And here's the part one want you to sit with before we get any deeper. The camera flip isn't just a gesture. It's a tell. In poker they'd call it a leak. A subconscious tick that leaks information the player didn't mean to give up. Blueface has been on camera every day of his adult career. He's a man who monetized the lens before he monetized the music. If he flinches at his own camera, it's because for a half second he remembered somebody specific was on the other side of it. That somebody was Nevaeh. And that flinch is going to matter later. Keep it in your back pocket. Let's start with what Nevaeh actually said, because the internet's been paraphrasing her into somebody softer than she is. From the room, sitting on his couch, streaming to his audience. Yeah, at this point, it's feeling like it's not my man. Like, you know who man that is, actually. She let it sit. Then, I'm with mine 24/7. They never put mine to the side. And if he ain't claiming mine, I ain't ever with him. I ain't gliding with him, sliding with him, kissing on him, touching him, none of that. Read that twice. That ain't a woman crying. That's a woman calculating. And listen to the grammar of it. She didn't say, he's not my man. She said it's feeling like it's not my man. Present participle, ongoing state. A woman narrating the exact moment a status is dissolving in front of her. Then she pivots into hypothetical territory. If he ain't claiming mine, I ain't ever with him. And lays out the contractual terms of her staying. Live on the stream that pays his rent. That's not a rant. That's a term sheet being read into the record. Anybody who's ever watched a negotiation happen in code recognized what she did there. She wasn't asking. She was notifying. Then Complex pulled the receipt from an earlier kickstream where Blueface just said it. Out loud. I cheated. I know. Sorry. Her response verbatim. There's no reason to say sorry if you had intentions on doing it. Flat. Cold. Almost administrative. And that word, administrative, I want to defend it because I know a chunk of the comments are going to say I'm reading too much into a tone. I'm not. There's a specific register a woman drops into when she's already priced in a betrayal, and she's just waiting for the receipt to print. It's the same register nurses use when they've already called the code, and they're filling out the paperwork. It's the register lawyers use when the case is already lost, and they're just running out the clock. Nevaeh didn't sound wounded. She sounded like she'd been rehearsing that response for weeks in her head, and Blueface finally gave her the cue. Then Chrisean herself, back in May, tried to control the framing before the framing controlled her. Y'all keep saying Chrisean Rock was with Blueface. No. Chrisean was with Jonathan, The old Chrisean died. Don't let that go over your head. And then the line she wanted us to remember. I forgave because I value peace more than carrying anger. No, we are not together. I just choose respect over resentment. Okay, I hear her. I just don't believe her. Because look at the architecture of that quote. Chrisean was with Jonathan. She's separating the stage name from the government name to signal an evolution, but she's also, whether she meant to or not, admitting that a version of her was with a version of him in a window she previously said didn't exist. The old Chrisean died is a hell of a sentence to volunteer if nothing happened. Nobody drafts an obituary for a self they didn't just resurrect. And the I forgave line. Forgiveness for what exactly? If they weren't together, if nothing crossed a line, what's the ledger she's clearing? That grape juice let her have the podium. But every syllable of that podium reads like a plea deal for a charge nobody in the courtroom had officially filed yet. And then whack 100, the manager. Back in April on the Catalina footage nobody's really talking about anymore. Y'all seen that AI, right? Shit was crazy. I'm like, damn, they gotta AI this N******** A with a stroller. He said it. He put it on the record. Called the footage fake. Then 2 months later the same two people are live streaming from a tour bus. Wild. And I want to walk right up to that whack quote and read it the way a defense attorney would. He didn't say, that's not them. He didn't say, that never happened. He said, y'all seen that AI, right? Leading question, framing device, the manager's version of the classic redirect. He handed the audience a conclusion, and then dared us to check its work. 2 months later, when the same two people are boxing on livestream, and 1 month after that when they're on a tour bus together, that conclusion collapses under its own weight. According to Complex's reporting on the WAC statement, that framing was already dead on arrival. The manager tried to get in front of a car that was already on top of him. Last one, Hollywood Unlocked pulled the framing. Nevaeh gave the whole thing. She said the link-up doesn't necessarily bother her, but she can't wrap her mind around the timing. Because Blueface literally just went on the Jason Lee show and publicly disowned Chrisean Jr. weeks. Not months. Weeks. Nevaeh isn't confused. She's offended by the pattern. And that distinction is the whole song. Confusion is emotional. Confusion cries. Confusion begs. What Nevaeh did was diagnose. She named the pattern, disowned the child, parked the pregnant girlfriend at home, reappear with the ex on tour, and she named it on a platform that his own camp runs. Hollywood Unlocks framing there is important, because they were the outlet that centered the sequencing over the sensation. The link-up isn't the scandal. The scandal is the calendar. Connect the dots. Don't argue about the dots. Rewind 6 months. Blueface goes on the Jason Lee sit-down. Denies paternity of Chrisean Jr. doubles down. Calls the whole situation dead. Moves Nevaeh into the house. Announces the pregnancy. Names the baby. Let that stack sit for a second, because the order matters. He didn't deny paternity and then quietly retreat. He denied paternity and then, on the same news cycle, he replaced the denied family with a new one on camera. That's not moving on. That's a rebrand. Denials from the Jason Lee sit-down were widely covered. Complex and Hollywood Unlocked both anchored their later timelines to it. And every subsequent move he made had to be read against the backdrop of that public disowning. Then May hits. Catalina footage leaks. Wax says AI. Blueface says AI. Nevaeh, per Wax's own words, is the one they had to convince first. Read that back. He had to convince his pregnant girlfriend the footage of him and his ex wasn't real. That's not a scandal. That's an admission dressed as a denial. Think about the labor implied in that sentence. If the footage was AI, if it was so obviously fake that Wack could laugh about it in a podcast interview, why did anybody need to be convinced? You don't convince people the moon is round. You convince people of things when the surface reading of the evidence doesn't land in your favor. The convincing itself is the confession, and Complex's write-up made it plain. The campaign to reframe Catalina was internal before it was external. He had to get the pregnant girlfriend on the same page before he could sell the story to the audience. May 10th, Rock is backstage at his show. May 11th, they're boxing on livestream. May 12th, she posts the old Chrisean died statement. 3 consecutive days. 3 escalating public appearances. 3 different framings. That's not organic. That's a rollout. If you drew that on a marketing calendar and slapped a product name on it, it'd look like an album launch. Backstage tease, main event live stream, closing PR statement to redirect the narrative. And that Grape Juice, to their credit, was one of the outlets that noticed the choreography and didn't just publish the choreography. They let Rock's own words carry the framing, which had the side effect of exposing the framing. Then it goes quiet, publicly. And here's the retention hook nobody's biting on. Why it went quiet? Because the quiet stretches are the interesting stretches. Nothing on the timeline between May 12th and the Miami stop except a couple of kick appearances, a Carlisa comment nobody paid attention to, and the low hum of a tour ramping back up. When the public silence is that clean after a spike that loud, something in the back rooms is either being negotiated or being timed. We didn't see it because we were meant not to. Hold that. Then the tour picks back up. Miami stop. Blueface pops Chrisean out on stage. Tour bus footage after. And now, the deleted post Blueface alleged Rock made, calling Chrisean Jr. his son, right in the middle of him telling the world he's not the father. Read the tempo of that deletion. Post goes up. Screenshots start circulating. Post comes down. That's a 24 to 48 hour window in the modern internet. Long enough for the receipt to permanent. Short enough for plausible deniability. And Blueface didn't just let it sit. He called it out. He alleged the post existed and framed it as Rock trying to reinsert Chrisean Jr. back into his paternity story. Whether Rock actually made that post, or somebody made it in her likeness, the operative fact is that Blueface used it. The Shade Room's write-up preserved the allegation with the caveat baked in alleges, not proves. That's the safe language. And it's also the language that tells you the receipt isn't fully cured yet. Now actually hold on. Back up. This is the part. The complex piece from July 30th. The argument where he told Nevaeh, she got no potential. All you know how to do is suck dick. He said that after admitting he cheated. In front of her son's superior. On camera. With her pregnant. I want you to sit inside that sentence for a second. Because the internet skimmed it and the internet was wrong to skim it. That's the specific rhetorical pattern of a man trying to detonate the leverage the other person is quietly building. Nevaeh had just gotten flat, cold, and administrative on him. She'd said the no reason to say sorry line. She'd calibrated her tone into something he couldn't fight, because he couldn't find her in it. So he swung for the most public, most degrading, most audience-baiting hit he could throw. In front of her child, no less. Because degradation is what you reach for when you've lost the temperature war. And Complex reported the exchange without editorializing, which made it hit even harder. When a straight news write-up of an insult sounds worse than any commentary you could layer on top, the tape is doing the work. Somebody in the group chat on the stream we're looking at said it perfectly. Why did he flip the camera? That's the whole story in 7 words. He flipped the camera because on some level he knew. The camera was the co-conspirator he was trying to uninvite. I keep coming back to Nevaeh's other line, the quiet one, the one nobody's clipping. I ain't cleaning no more. I'm done. You can come back home, and you can clean this up yourself. She's not talking about dishes. She's talking about the emotional cleanup that domestic partners in these arrangements always end up doing. The interviews she's expected to walk back. The Carlisa comments she's expected to smooth over. The co-parents she's expected to be gracious to. The assistants she's expected to be polite with. The tour managers she's expected to text back. That labor is invisible, and it is enormous, and it is unpaid. And the second she said, I ain't cleaning no more. Every woman who's ever run somebody else's PR from inside their own house heard her loud and clear. That line is the load-bearing sentence of the entire clip. And it's the line the tabloids underclipped. Watch what she does next. Not what she says. What she does. One bar, one frame, one gesture. The camera flip. Watch it in slow motion if you haven't. Blueface doesn't rotate the phone to show the crowd. He rotates it to bury the frame. Chrisean's still in the shot, but at an angle that reads accidental. That's not accidental. That's a man who knows a specific person is watching this in real time and doesn't want to be caught being comfortable. Comfort was the giveaway. Not the touch, not the proximity, the ease. And ease is the tell that experienced women look for, because ease can't be manufactured under a lie. Anybody can fake affection. Nobody can fake muscle memory. when his shoulder dropped into hers on that footage, when his hand found a hip he'd found 1,000 times before, when his weight redistributed the way a body redistributes only for a body it already knows. That's the moment the whole "we're just cool now" story collapses. You can't retrain a nervous system for a live stream. And every viewer who's ever loved somebody long enough to memorize the way they lean noticed the lean before they noticed anything else. The nipple line. I know. But the group chat commentary going, "the titty's gonna bust out," while pointing at Rock. That's not petty. That's forensic. Nevaeh is the one currently carrying his baby. Her body's changing. Rock's on stage, tour fit, unbothered, and what fans in the clip clocked as a deliberately provocative fit. The visual contrast was engineered, whether he meant it or not. Bodies say things mouths won't. And that engineering, intentional or accidental, is a form of communication too. Standing next to a pregnant partner's absence, with an ex-partner's body-conscious presence, is a whole statement, and it lands whether it was drafted or not. This isn't a moral read, it's a signal read. When the visuals of a stream are that pointed and the pregnant girlfriend is watching from the sender's own house, the message got delivered even if nobody licked the envelope. The chorus of "he ain't happy with that." This one I keep chewing on. Multiple voices in the stream, women, mostly, women who know the tells, clock the same thing at the same second. He's doing this the whole time to stay out the camera view. That's not one person's read. That's a room's consensus. When a room agrees before the internet does, that's usually the truth arriving early. And the sociology of that room is worth pausing on. These are not neutral observers. These are women who've been in Nevaeh's exact seat before, in their own lives, in their own kitchens, in their own group chats. The seat where you already know what's happening, and you're just waiting for permission from another woman to say it out loud. When they hit that consensus in unison, it wasn't a hot take. It was a diagnostic. And diagnostics from a room like that are usually 2 months ahead of the tabloids. The superior of it all, Nevaeh's son, 6 years old roughly, and Complex reported that during an earlier stream, he told his own mom she's not happy anymore and she's crazy now. A child said that, out loud, on camera, and nobody in that room disputed it. When the kid's the smartest person in the shot, something's rotting under the floorboards. And that's the emotional retention loop nobody's paying enough attention to. Kids don't editorialize. Kids report weather. When a 6-year-old tells his mother she's changed, he's not doing psychology. He's doing observation. He noticed she used to laugh a certain way, and she doesn't anymore. He noticed the temperature of the house shifted. He noticed which adults stopped coming to breakfast. The fact that Complex captured that exchange and left it in the piece, without commentary, was one of the sharpest editorial choices in the whole story. They let a child's sentence carry the weight of an adult's diagnosis. The legal shadow. Y'all forget, Blueface is out on probation. Clark County, Nevada. Judge Kathleen Delaney granted him up to 3 years supervised, suspended a 2 to 5 year sentence over his head. Every viral stream, every parking lot police stop, like the one that broke out in the middle of the current clip. Every, "Are you on probation?" as well being asked to his passengers. That's not entertainment. That's a live wire under everything he's doing. He's playing house on camera, with a probation officer's phone number in his contacts. Nevaeh knows that too. And the audience underindexes this. Probation isn't a suggestion. It's a leash with a specific length and a specific pull. Delaney's supervised terms, per 8 News Now's reporting, include conditions that reach into exactly the kinds of situations his life keeps producing on camera. Travel, associations, incidents in public spaces, arrests in his orbit. Every time a squad car rolls up to a shoot, every time a passenger of his gets flagged, every time a tour stop puts him in a jurisdiction with a different flavor of law enforcement. That's a stress test on a suspended sentence that could, at the judge's discretion, become an active one. That's the wire. And Nevaeh, who's been in the room for a lot of these moments, is one of the few people who actually gets it. The audio itself. One more layer people skip. Listen to the sound design of the stream. Not the words, the ambient. There's a specific hum a house makes when it's tense. You can hear the flatness in Nevaeh's mic when she's talking. The slight elevation in Blueface's voice when he pivots. The way Superior's voice cuts through because nobody in the room bothered to lower the volume for the child. Sound engineers call that a hostile mix. A room whose acoustic profile is telling you the emotional weather before anybody says anything on mic. The clip has a hostile mix. That's before we even get to the words. That's a room that had already decided. Same story, different weapons. Complex ran it domestic. Their piece is a cheating admission and a live stream argument. A couple imploding in real time. Clean sourced, no editorializing. Hollywood Unlocked ran it chronological. Their frame is, he disowned Rock's kid, moved Nevaeh in, and now he's back with Rock. The story is the sequencing, not the cheating. That framing hits harder because it makes him look like a man running the same routine on a fresh calendar. That grape juice ran it literary. They called the two of them the hip-hop equivalent of DC's Joker and Harley Quinn, and let Rock's own words carry the piece. The old Chrisean died. That framing centers Rock as a self-aware protagonist, getting out of a cycle, not into one. 3 outlets. 3 villains. Same footage. And when 3 respected outlets look at the same footage, and each one lands on a different villain, that's not journalism failing. That's the situation refusing to fit into one frame. Complex, being the culture desk with the tightest editorial reins of the 3, treated it as an interpersonal domestic story because that's the story their sourcing could stand behind. Hollywood Unlocked, which has always been more comfortable naming pattern behavior, treated it chronologically because the calendar was the thing they could put a ruler on. That grape juice, which trades in narrative long before it trades in verdict, treated it as a mythology because they understood correctly that this saga has already exited news and entered folklore. All 3 reads are correct. All 3 are incomplete. The full picture only forms when you stack them, and that's why we're stacking them. Now Steelman the counter-argument, because I hear it in the comments already. Somebody's gonna type. Nevaeh knew who he was when she met him. She moved in on Chrisean's territory. Don't cry when Chrisean walks back through it. I get the logic. It sounds clean. It's also incomplete, because Nevaeh didn't just move in on a man. She moved in on a narrative he was selling. He told the world Chrisean Jr. wasn't his. He told Jason Lee's audience Rock was done. He told Nevaeh on stream, I wouldn't have made you my girlfriend if I was going to cheat on you. That's a complex verified quote from days before the Catalina footage surfaced. You don't get to sell a story that's specific and then hide behind. She knew what she signed up for. She signed up for the story you wrote. The counter falls apart the second you timestamp it. And here's why the timestamp is the kill shot on that Steelman. The she knew what she signed up for defense only works when the seller and the buyer transacted in good faith, and the buyer just miscalculated risk. But Blueface, on his own streams, actively rewrote the risk profile Nevaeh was buying into. He didn't just say the past is the past. He said, on the record, that he wouldn't have made her his girlfriend if the specific behavior on trial was on the table. That's not a vibe. That's a warranty. And warranties don't get voided by she should have known. Warranties get voided by breach. Complex published the warranty language in the days before Catalina, and Catalina is the breach. The order of operations is what wins this argument. There's a second counter I hear too, and it's smarter than the first one. You're reading too much strategy into a chaotic man. Sometimes people just cheat because they're weak. There's no plan. That one deserves a real answer. And my real answer is that even chaotic behavior, run through a management structure with a manager who's already gone on record about the AI framing, becomes strategy by the time it hits the audience. He doesn't have to be a strategist for the rollout to be strategic. Whack is a strategist. The camp is a strategist. The tour promoter is a strategist. The algorithm, above all of them, is the strategist. Blueface can be as impulsive as he wants. The moment the impulse gets edited, clipped, and released on a tour schedule, it becomes plan. That's the difference between a mistake and a monetized mistake. And every mistake here has been monetized. Here's my read. Take it or leave it. But I want it on the record, so we can come back to it. The reunion isn't a reunion. It's a content strategy. Blueface is out. Probation tight, budget tight, audience fragmented. Chrisean has Baddies USA money, a boxing lane, a gospel pivot she never fully monetized, and a paternity question nobody's cleared. Nevaeh has a pregnancy, a household, a story arc built around domesticity. Jaden Alexis has Kai bands orbiting her, Carlisa in her corner, and the loudest camp of the three. Everybody on this map has an audience, and Blueface is the intersection. The flip of the camera wasn't guilt. It was inventory management. He wants Rock in frame just enough to feed the tour footage, and out of frame just enough to keep Nevaeh from packing. He wants Nevaeh in the house so the great, healthy pregnancy, our Carlisa co-signed, keeps humming. He wants Jaden's camp cooking so Kai Bands becomes a foil, not a threat. That's not a love triangle. That's a rotation. And rotations exist because they convert. Watch how the beats hit. Every time one baby mama's storyline slows down, another one flares up on cue. That's not chaos. That's choreography. Somebody in that camp knows what week it is on the algorithm, and every leaked clip drops with a rhythm too clean to be spontaneous. And here's where the choreography theory picks up more evidence than the comments will give it credit for. The tour dates line up with the Baddies USA reunion promo cycle. The kick stream cadence lines up with the algorithm's weekend-heavy watch time curves. The leaked tour bus clips consistently drop within a 48-hour window of somebody in the orbit needing a bump. When you graph the release timing against the platform analytics, the peaks don't stagger the way accidents stagger. They stagger the way scheduled content staggers. And this is why Complex's reporting on the whack framing matters even more in retrospect. Because if the manager was already comfortable calling AI on the record, the manager was already comfortable operating in a media environment where footage authenticity is a variable he can push. That's not a wild theory. That's a manager doing manager work. The person who actually loses in this rotation isn't Rock. Rock's diversified. It's Nevaeh. Because the rotation only works if she stays available. The second she leaves, the whole machine has to reset. And I think this is where I'm least certain. So hear me out gently. I think she knows she's the load-bearing wall. That's why her tone shifted from hurt to administrative. That's why she said, "I'll have my moment when I have the baby." She's timing him. And that's the sentence I want to plant a flag on. Because if this whole read is correct, this is the sentence people are going to quote back to me in 6 months. She's timing him. She's not reacting to a betrayal. She's scheduling one. The pregnancy isn't just biology, it's chronology. It's the one clock in this whole ecosystem that Blueface can't reschedule, can't spin, can't AI, and can't outstream. The baby arrives when the baby arrives. Everything else on his calendar, tour dates, kick streams, Rock reappearances, is soft. That date is hard. And a hard date in a soft calendar is a woman's best friend when she's negotiating for exit terms she hasn't announced yet. The thing that stings the opposition is this. Every "she needs to leave" comment underestimates how much leverage a woman collects when the man in the house needs her to keep the ceiling up. Rock had to leave to become Rock. Nevaeh's calculating what version of herself she becomes if she stays 6 more weeks. If I'm reading her right, and I might not be, that's a real might not. The exit isn't when we think it is. It's when the baby's here and the leverage flips. And once the leverage flips, the story flips with it. Because the audience that currently sees her as the placeholder is the same audience that will pivot on a dime the second she posts the birth announcement with the caption she's been drafting in her notes app since the Catalina story broke. That's the pattern with women in these situations. The audience wants a comeback arc, and the comeback arc doesn't start until the receipts are permanent. A baby is a permanent receipt. Everything Blueface said, did, streamed, and denied is now attached to a person with a last name and a birth certificate. That changes the math on every future clip. It changes what her tears mean. It changes what her silence means. It changes what her Instagram grid means. It even changes what her absence means. She's about to be the most powerful person on this map, and the map hasn't caught up yet. Carlisa already told the world how she feels. She's on the record calling out Nevaeh, calling out her son, calling out the pregnancy energy. That's the mother-in-law standing on the porch with a broom. When Carlisa is the one saying the quiet parts out loud, the family isn't a family. It's a franchise. And I want to be careful here, because Carlisa's her own force of nature. And I don't want to flatten her into a plot device. She has, on and off for years, done the actual mothering the camp needed. She's called Blueface out when he needed to be called out. She's protected Jaden when Jaden needed protecting. She's said and unsaid 100 things about Rock. Carlisa isn't a villain. Carlisa is a matriarch trying to run a matriarchy inside a media company disguised as a family. Hollywood unlocks framing of her recent commentary caught that duality well. She's protecting the franchise the only way she knows how, which is by picking the storyline she thinks pays out. That happens to not be Nevaeh's storyline. Yet, watch how that shifts once the baby's here and the baby is hers to protect. And the loudest thing in this whole story? Nobody in Blueface camp has cleaned up the Ronnie Doe case shadow, still hanging over Rock's file. The February 2025 investigation into her ex-boyfriend Karen Can's murder is still open, and every time Blueface pulls Rock into frame, he pulls that shadow into his own frame too. He's not just risking Nevaeh. He's risking his probation, his tour insurance, and his access to his own kid. For Stroller's shot, Wack already told us wasn't real. That's not strategy. That's a man who mistook the algorithm for a plan. And the difference between the algorithm and a plan is the exact difference between a career and a highlight reel. The algorithm gives you spikes. A plan gives you compounding. Every time Blueface has hit a spike in the last 18 months, the runway after it has been shorter than the runway before it, because the audience is subsidizing the drama. With the tension, it stops giving back the moment the next spike drops. Meanwhile, Rock's runway is compounding, because her spikes are attached to product. A season of baddies, a boxing match, a rumored gospel record. Nevaeh's runway hasn't started compounding yet, because it can't start until the baby's here. But when it starts, and this is the projection I'm most willing to be wrong on but least willing to soften, it's going to compound faster than anybody in the camp is prepared for. Where this goes next? By the time Solar Porter arrives, late August, per the ultrasound Nevaeh posted back in December, expect a soft, we're focused on the baby statement from Blueface camp, and expect it to land right on top of a Rock press cycle for Baddies USA reunion promo. That collision is baked in. Don't be shocked when Carlisa is the one who forces the acknowledgement before he's ready. And watch the exact language of that statement when it drops. If it uses we, Blueface is trying to salvage the pairing publicly. If it uses I, Blueface is already drafting the split. If Nevaeh doesn't retweet, quote post, or otherwise co-sign it within 24 hours, the split is already a done deal in private, and we're just watching a rollout. Statements from camps like this one are readable the same way you read wedding invitations. The font choice tells you the marriage. Pay attention to font. Watch how Jaden Alexis moves in the next 4 to 6 weeks. She's been quietly repositioning with Kai bands in her orbit. And every live stream she does, where she doesn't mention Blueface, is a live stream that builds her lane away from his. Once the baby lands and the domestic story loses its novelty, Jaden's camp starts looking like the safest place to be. And Carlisa knows it. The reshuffle after the birth is where the real math happens, and the person who thought he was running the rotation is going to find out he was one of the pieces on the board, not the hand moving them. And the reshuffle isn't only about who's in and who's out. It's about who controls the storyline rights. Right now, Blueface camp effectively controls the framing of every relationship in his orbit, because he's the intersection. The moment there's a second baby publicly named in his orbit, with a woman actively narrating on her own platform, that centralization breaks. Nevaeh becomes a rights holder. Rock's already a rights holder, because she's got a network deal that pays her to be one. Jaden's building a music-adjacent rights position with Kai bands. Carlisa's already the family narrator. Blueface is the only one on the map, without an independent storyline lane. And the birth is when that becomes obvious to everybody. Not just to the people who've been watching close. 5 years out, this whole chapter reads different. Rock's already halfway pivoted to a lane that doesn't need Blueface, boxing, reality TV, the gospel record she teased. Nevaeh, if she plays this the way I think she's about to, walks out with a child, a house-adjacent narrative, and a solo brand nobody saw coming when she first showed up. Jaden ends up with the cleanest legacy of the three, because she stayed the furthest from the cameras. And Blueface, I'll say this quiet, Blueface ends up being the guy who fumbled 3 empires trying to run one rotation. And 5 years is the correct window here, because that's the window the culture uses to reassess. 5 years ago, Chrisean was a viral clip nobody thought would outlast Blueface Zeus-era discourse. Now she has a lane he can only visit. 5 years from now, Nevaeh is going to be a name the current audience will pretend they always respected, and the clips they'll cite as their receipts are the exact clips they're currently using to write her off. The clip we're breaking down today is one of those. Bookmark it. When 2031 rolls around and there's a nostalgic long-form on Nevaeh's rise, this stream is the origin story. And you saw it here first, with the camera flip that started the whole thing. The failure I'm predicting for the opposition read is this. Everybody currently framing Nevaeh as the naive one, the placeholder, the she'll get over it character. Y'all gonna be the ones writing the "we didn't see her coming" retrospectives in 2028. She's not the side character. She's the one taking notes. Once the baby hits, watch the tone shift. Not next week, not next month, but when it shifts, it'll shift hard. And everybody who slept on her energy in the stream we just broke down will pretend they saw it the whole time. We won't. We'll have the timestamp. You made it to the end, which means you already know what this channel does different. Drop your read in the comments. Is Nevaeh calculating, or am I giving her too much credit? Fight me on it. Like, subscribe, hit the bell, and stay locked because the second Solar gets here. We're pulling up with part 2 before anybody else even has the story straight. Fame Cryptix. One story. One day. See y'all in the next one.